During my first practicum experience at Northcote Intermediate, the complex problem that I observed involved one student making racist remarks to three other students in our classroom. I don't feel comfortable repeating what the students' remarks were, but they were inappropriate and degrading towards the other students. The individuals involved in this complex problem were my PLM, who was a black male, the victims, who were two 11-year-old Māori males and one 11-year-old Pacifica boy. The Pākehā student who was saying the racial slurs, the Pākehā student who reported the abuse, and of course myself. The problem was brought to me by a friend of one of the students who was being verbally abused, and they roughly stated student X is saying racial slurs towards student Y. Straight away I was caught in a bit of a grey zone, and I was unsure of how I should move forward with this situation. However, the decision I made was to go straight to my PLM and fill him in on the situation. He straight away told me that he will handle this from here on in, but I can observe how he handles it. After investigating and asking the victim what was said on how long has the verbal abuse been occurring, it came out that it had been happening for weeks and that it wasn't just one victim but three Māori and Pacifica boys. After hearing this, my PLM went straight to the offending student and asked for his take on the situation, and the boy came clean straight away. They had been using the racial slurs, and it was because the boys were being mean to him and not playing with him at breaks. These boys were usually really good friends, and the problem that was occurring was the boys' friendships were being torn apart, and the Pākehā boy was resorting to racial slurs to assume some sort of defense mechanism, which obviously wasn't appropriate. My PLM then moved into restorative behavior practices and resolved the conflict. I will go further into detail on this in the following sections. The three lenses that we use to describe this complex problem are behaviorism, restorative practices, and Tātai-Ako. These are frameworks or lenses through which we can understand and approach human behavior, learning, and development. Each lens provides unique perspectives and strategies for addressing individuals' needs in various contexts. This section will simply describe what each of these lenses are. First of all, behaviorism. Behaviorism is a psychology theory that focuses on observable behavior and the environmental factors that shape it. It views behavior as a result of conditioning processes and emphasizes the importance of external stimuli in shaping human actions. Behaviorism suggests that behaviors can be learned, unlearned, or modified through reinforcement, punishment, and associative processes. One of the prominent behaviorist theories in classical conditioning, proposed by Ivan Pavlov, this theory asserts that behaviors can be elicited through the repeated association of a neutral stimulus with a naturally occurring stimulus. Another influential theory is operant conditioning, developed by B.F. Skinner, which posits that behavior is influenced by its consequences. Reinforcement in the form of rewards or punishment strengthens or weakens behaviors, respectively. The second lens I'd like to look at is restorative practices. Restorative practices is an approach to addressing conflict, harm, and discipline that focuses on building relationships, repairing harm, and fostering a sense of belonging within communities. It seeks to move away from punitive measures and instead emphasizes accountability, empathy, and understanding. Restorative practices aim to create a supportive environment where individuals take responsibility for their actions, engage in meaningful dialogue, and work towards repairing harm caused by their behavior. It encourages the involvement of all stakeholders affected by an incident, including those who caused harm, those who were harmed, and the wider community. The goal is to restore relationships, promote personal growth, and prevent future harm. The final lens I'd like to take a look at is Tātai-Ako. Tātai-Ako is a cultural competency framework developed in New Zealand specifically for teachers to support the educational success of Māori students. It recognises the importance of honouring and valuing Māori culture, identity, and language in educational settings. Tātai-Ako provides a lens through which teachers can reflect on their practices and enhance their ability to meet the needs of Māori learners. Tātai-Ako is based on four principles: wānanga, participating in learning together; whakapono, having high expectations; whanaungatanga, which is working in relationships; and manaakitanga, showing care and support. These principles guide teachers in fostering positive learning environments, engaging with Māori students and their whānau, and acknowledging the cultural identity and knowledge of Māori learners. By incorporating Tātai-Ako into their teaching practice, educators can better understand the experiences and aspirations of Māori students and create culturally responsive learning environments that support their academic and holistic development. Now, on to analysing the problem through the three lenses. Analysing the complex problem of racist remarks using the lens of Tatayako, behaviorism, and restorative practices allows us to understand the situation from multiple perspectives and provides insight into effective strategies for addressing the issue. We can consider the following implications for each lens. First of all, we'll go Tatayako. Tatayako, as a cultural competency framework, emphasizes the importance of honoring Māori culture, identity, and language in educational settings. Applying Tatayako in this situation involves recognizing the cultural context and the impacts of racism on Māori and Pacifica students. It requires teachers to engage in culturally responsive practices and creates an inclusive environment that respects students' cultural identities. Applying the principles of Tatayako, such as Wananga and Whanangatanga, encourages teachers to foster a sense of belonging and understanding among students. It involves supporting the victims by acknowledging their experiences and promoting their well-being. Additionally, teachers can engage the offending student in dialogue that focuses on the impact of his behavior, promoting empathy and encouraging him to take responsibility for his actions. The Treaty of Waitangi, as a foundational document in New Zealand, provides a basis for understanding the rights and responsibilities of all individuals, including students. It highlights the importance of equity, partnership, and participation. In this context, it is crucial to address racism and promote a safe and inclusive learning environment that aligns with the principles of the treaty. The second lens I'd like to look at, and it correlates with the previous lens, Tatayaka, is restorative practices. Restorative practices focus on repairing harm, building relationships, and fostering a sense of accountability within a community. In this situation, employing restorative practices involves addressing the harm caused by the racist remarks, restoring relationships between the students involved, and preventing future incidents. Restorative practices require facilitating a dialogue involving the victims, the offending student, and the wider community. The aim is to create a safe space for expressing feelings, understanding the impact of actions, and developing empathy. This process encourages the offending student to take responsibility, make amends, and learn from the experience, while the victims have an opportunity to be heard, express their emotions, and participate in finding a resolution. This restorative practices was the lens used during the actual problem, and I found it was very positive. The last lens I'd like to look at is behaviorism. This lens wasn't in fact used during the complex problem, but it is a path that could have been taken, but might not have been beneficial for the learners. From a behaviorist perspective, the focus is on observable behavior and the environmental factors that shape it. The offending student's racial slurs can be seen as a learned response to perceived negative social situation. This aligns with behaviorist theories such as operant conditioning, which suggests that behaviors are influenced by their consequences. In this case, the offending student resorted to racial slurs as a defense mechanism because he felt excluded by his friends. Their behavior can be understood as an attempt to gain attention, assert power, or seek validation. A behaviorist approach would involve addressing the underlying factors contributing to the behavior and providing appropriate consequences or reinforcement to modify it. As mentioned in the previous section, the solution we took as a teaching team was restorative practices. Restorative practices focus on repairing harm, building relationships, and in promoting accountability within a community. The following steps were taken to resolve the issue. First of all, we identified and investigated the issue. After being informed about the problem, my PLM immediately took action by investigating the situation further. This aligns with the Code of Professional Responsibility and standards for teaching profession, particularly in terms of maintaining professional relationships and ensuring a safe and inclusive learning environment. By promptly addressing the issue, my PLM demonstrated a commitment to the well-being of all students and upholding professional standards. Second of all, we went into dialogue and understanding. My PLM engaged in a meaningful dialogue with the victims and the offending student. This process allowed for a deeper understanding of the underlying issues and motivations behind the behavior. By providing a safe space for open communication, my PLM created an opportunity for the victims to express their feelings and for the offending student to share his perspective. This approach reflects the teaching standard as we created and maintained a supportive and inclusive learning environment. We also enacted pono, as we showed integrity by acting in ways that are fair, honest, and ethical and just. Third, we went into restorative circle. A restorative circle was facilitated by my PLM, involving the victims, the offending student, and other relevant parties. This circle provided a structured format for participants to express their emotions, share their experiences, and work towards repairing the harm caused. Through the circle, the victims had an opportunity to be heard, and the offending student was able to take responsibility for his actions. This approach aligns with the teaching standard of engaging in professional relationships that are characterized by respect, empathy, and cultural responsiveness. We then ask the student to go away and write some key points of things that have upset them in the past and what they would like to do moving forward. We then repeated this restorative circle process to see how we can move forward as a group. Fourthly, we went into reconciliation and rebuilding relationships. The focus of the restorative circle was on reconciliation and rebuilding relationships. Participants were encouraged to express their expectations for the future and discuss ways to prevent similar incidents from occurring. This process allowed for the re-establishment of trust and a shared commitment to positive relationships within the classroom. By fostering a sense of belonging and inclusivity, my PLM upheld the principles of Te Tiriti o Waitangi, particularly in terms of equity, partnership, and participation. We also enacted Manakitanga as we created a welcoming, caring, and creative learning environment that treats everyone with respect and dignity. By utilizing restorative practices, my PLM effectively addressed the problem of racist remarks by acknowledging the harm caused, promoting accountability, and working towards repairing relationships. This approach aligns with the code and standards of teaching, ensuring professional relationships, creating an inclusive learning environment, and respecting the principles of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. The overall solution pathed by my PLM was successful, and we were able to restore peace in the classroom and also restore the friendships between the students. How we went about solving this complex problem correlates with my own teaching philosophy. This can be seen because restorative practices resulted in creating a positive, inclusive, and supportive learning environment that addresses conflicts and promotes personal growth and well-being. My teaching philosophy emphasizes the importance of creating a safe and supportive learning environment. By implementing restorative practices, I contributed to the creation of a safe and inclusive environment where students feel valued and supported. My teaching philosophy also highlights the significance of building positive relationships with students. This is reflected in the solution where my PLM engaged in meaningful dialogue with the victims and the offending student. By establishing positive relationships based on trust, respect, and empathy, I created an environment where students are more likely to feel comfortable expressing their emotions and resolving conflicts constructively. Motivation is a key element of my teaching philosophy, and I strive to create engaging and stimulating learning experiences for my students. In the solution, by implementing restorative practices, we address the underlying issues that led to the racist remarks. Restorative practices provide an opportunity for students to understand the impact of their actions and take responsibility for their behavior, fostering intrinsic motivation and promoting personal growth. My teaching philosophy emphasizes the importance of authenticity in learning. This aligns with the solution's use of restorative practices, which encourages students to engage in authentic conversations and reflection. By implementing restorative practices and adhering to my teaching philosophy in future contexts, I will contribute to creating a positive, inclusive, and supportive learning environment that addresses conflicts and promotes personal growth and well-being.